All right, seventh grade, a couple of reminders before we get started. So you should have your block letters mapped out to be capital letters that touch top, bottom, side of your block. Okay, that look like this, that have even thickness throughout. And if you have a straightaway, make sure you use a ruler. Okay, so at this point, my block letters do that for the most part, and I need to take a moment to erase any of my lines from my block that I no longer need. Okay, so anything that's not part of your letter, that's part of that initial block that you drew, get rid of it using your eraser. Okay, so that is done. The next thing that you're going to go ahead and do is decide on your background level. Okay, your lines for your background are going to go through both your letters and any additional drawing. Okay, so see how this line that separates my background goes through my letters and also my additional drawing. Okay, decide on a level, use a ruler, don't use a ruler, and make sure those lines do that. The last thing I want you guys to figure out before you start sectioning off your drawing, indicating whether it's going to be light or dark, and okay, you're drawing with me to add the Sharpie, is I do want you to figure out a way that you can visually represent your word. Okay, so this can be through shapes, it can be through symbols, it can be through imagery, it could be through silhouettes. So a silhouette's kind of like a shadow of something. So any of those things you can draw, use the internet to help you. I do want you to interpret your word in terms of imagery, okay? So this is what mine looks like right here, okay? And I wanna share with you how I started to do the process for the optical illusion art. I'm gonna fold this back because I wanna pretend that it does not exist, all right? You are not gonna do this, but I'm just doing this for this video. Okay, so pretend that this is my artwork. So it does all the things I just mentioned. Okay, so background lines go through my letters and my imagery. Okay, what I'm going to go ahead and start to do is I'm going to think about the black and white areas on my background. Okay, so every other area, background section is going to go black, white, and all of this stuff that is on top, so think letters and anything I've drawn, is based on what the background is for that particular section. So let me just share with you an example, okay? So once you have this all sketched out, my last background section happens to be black. So I'm gonna start with, I know that this next section is going to be white, okay? So I know that this background section here is white. What that means is anything that cuts into that section is going to be black. So I'm going to do what I call scribble shading and indicate any object or part of a letter that goes into that section with scribble shading. Okay, this is just to indicate to both you and I that this is going to be black with Sharpie. The reason why I don't want you to go in straight with Sharpie is because you are going to make an error. How do I know that? I made many errors with this yesterday. So if I'm making the errors, you are also making the errors, most likely, okay? So because this part of my drawing cuts into the white background section, I know it's going to be black. Okay, so let me scribble that in there. Okay, it stops right there. Okay, for the next section, this part is also gonna be black. Okay, so I'm scribbling it right to there. This part of the C is white just because it's on something that's black. All right, white, boom, done. Okay, now the background of the next section, okay, because the background here was white, I know that this background of this section is going to be black, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and scribble shade the background section in black, okay? What that means is because this background section is black, any objects or letters, etc., that cut into that section are going to be white, okay? So that means part of my spiral here that cuts into that black section is going to be white, okay? This scribble shading will again help both you and I figure out if your drawing is correct prior to adding the Sharpie, okay? Once you have done your scribble shading in all of your sections, again, it's always based on your background section, whether it's black or white, I want you to raise your hand, I will double check your drawing, and most likely I will give you a Sharpie. okay? When you are on Sharpie, you are to take your time, okay? Use a ruler, okay, on block letters and on sections in the background where applicable, okay? And craftsmanship is king, all right? The other thing I'm gonna ask that you all do is there will be some paper on your table that looks like this, okay? Use this as a placemat, okay? So while you're sharpieing this, Sharpie is probably gonna go off onto the table a little bit. Make sure it goes off onto the placemat rather than my table, okay? Make sure that you have me double check your work before you go on to Sharpie, okay? Let me know if you're really confused. I feel like this messed with my head yesterday. It totally kicked my butt. So just make sure that you, if you have questions before you move on to your Sharpie, that I double check your stuff.